Hi, I'm Cameron. I just read comics. I love them. On today's episode of Cameron Reads Comics, I'm going to be talking about this behemoth Immortal Hulk Omnibus by Ewing and Joe Bennett. So let's go check it out. This omnibus collects a lot of things. I didn't just read this omnibus, I kind of just read it a lot via digital. I read it on Marvel Unlimited, so I kind of went through issues 1 through 50 of Immortal Hulk. You really don't need to know anything about Hulk going into the story. For example, I didn't know anything about Hulk going into the story. I'd highly recommend, though, knowing something about the different variations of the Hulk. Like, he has a lot of personalities, and so to be aware of those going into a story like this really helps. But mostly, largely, this is a really great story hopping into the Hulk. I don't think you need to know much at all. Do you know who Betty Ross is? Do you know Rick Jones? What about the personality Joe Fixit? Stuff like that is really kind of closer to what this story is doing and what you need to know about the Hulk going into it. In my opinion, this book is literally what put Al Ewing on the map. And I only say that because this is where I found him first. This was one of the best books at Marvel when it was coming out. I was simultaneously reading Donny Cates' Venom and Jason Aaron's Thor, and this book was coming out and it was selling like hotcakes off the rack. I knew that when it was coming out, I was just gonna wait and read it, pick it up when it was all complete. When the omnibus got announced, I kind of dragged my feet on getting it, but I'm so glad it skipped the line and I finally got to read it. And it's definitely not what I expected. I've recently started to get into horror movies. I've never been a horror movie guy. I'm a superhero guy. This a body horror Hulk book was pretty radical. Not quite what I was thinking it was going to be. I can't emphasize this enough. It is absolutely incredible, and I think one of the greatest Hulk books of all time. If you were going to give someone Hulk, if someone doesn't understand the character or has a really limited perspective on what they think, what the capacity of a Hulk story is, this is the kind of book that you give them. My favorite thing that this does it not only explores the Hulk's relationship with the public, but also the public's relationship with the Hulk. And then it dives into, specifically, I think it spends the largest chunk of the story is how does Hulk feel about himself? Not just how does Bruce Banner's familial relationship play into everything. I know that Banner's origin has to do with trauma, and this does explore that, but it doesn't beat you over the head with it. It's a beautiful character study for this character. And I think no matter what, no matter how you chop it, I think the Hulk is an incredibly difficult character to write. So to see something like this with such a fresh take on the character was incredible. It explores all of the Hulk and Bruce Banner's personalities. You had Devil Hulk, Savage Hulk, Green Scar, then there's the multiple personalities of Bruce Banner. You had Joe Fixit, and then regular plain Jane Bruce Banner. And so some of the main arcs are, first one being, is he both? Sets up the Devil Hulk. The idea conceptually is that Hulk only comes out at midnight, and only once Bruce Banner dies. Next arc is called The Green Door. When Bruce gets infected with gamma radiation, a gateway is open called The Green Door. And where The Green Door opens is pretty freaking radical. It's actually hell. My favorite arc being We Believe in Bruce Banner and Hulk is Hulk. It has to do with the public exploration of Hulk and how long can a character like the Hulk stay in the public eye. I think the long-standing idea of the Hulk has been, Hulk just wants to be left alone. And then when Hulk is alone, he copes with loneliness. And so, it's the balance of those. It's he wants to be left alone. When he is left alone, when he gets what he wants, he doesn't want to be alone anymore. It's a cycle, and I think that's really interesting, and the way that this story explores that concept I thought was pretty cool, really radically well done. The story comes across the idea of what happens if the Hulk is loved and accepted. And then largely there's the return of Rick Jones, which is one of the bigger major key issues in this entire run. Okay, so for the villains in this book, you have the leader, Dario Agger, CEO of Roxxon, who I think is in the modern era with Hulk and Thor, one of my favorite villains currently coming around. Zemnu, who's a cool brand new villain who I freaking like. General 4chan, new character is Jackie McGee. She's not a villain, I don't think. I just wrote my list down wrong. There's, a team he fights often, Gamma Force, who I actually love the whole team. Like Sasquatch, there's a great Hulk versus Sasquatch. There's also a great Hulk versus the Thing from Fantastic Four arc, which is great because there was also in the Fantastic Four arc a crossover with Immortal Hulk during the Thing and Alicia Masters' honeymoon. It's a great 2-issue mini that I loved when it came out. So I was like, again, Immortal Hulk was all over what I was reading. I want to hit you guys with some big moments. These aren't crazy spoilers, but there are some spoilers. Rick Jones returns from the dead. Hulk goes to hell. Hulk fights the Thing. Love it. The public loves Hulk. The public hates Hulk. The formation of Gamma Force, who was Alpha Force, and like Sasquatch getting that gamma radiation and like figuring out how that works, I really liked. Hulk fights a kaiju, and again, after that, there's so much more. I've only scratched the surface. It's 50 issues, so there's plenty that goes on in this one. Now for the art. Joe Bennett was absolutely nuts. He was insanely talented in this run. Main artist on the series, and he's absolutely amazing. I love the way his Hulk looks, and no matter what, this run would not be what it is without Joe Bennett, which it needs to be shouted from the heavens. Tonally, this book being a horror book, no other artist could have done what he did here. And especially some of the body horror elements. I specifically remember I was like reading this run on my tablet when I was on a road trip. And it was a work road trip. And so I'm sitting in the back reading this book. And my boss is sitting next to me looking over my shoulder. And I just remember being mortified thinking like, what is this gnarly, grotesque, like body horror thing going on? Like the gnarliest stuff. And I'm like, well, this guy probably thinks I'm so weird because I'm reading this, but I read like 17 issues during that whole car ride, and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. But like, out of context, it's kind of weird, and I'm just going to call myself out for that. It's still worth it though. Joe Bennett has such a polished style. Like, he cuts no corners doing any of what he does, and that's one of probably the more menacing aspects of this book. I think that to do something with horror elements and making it incredibly polished is actually, it makes it even better. Like, when you can polish that stuff up as opposed to making it super dark, demented, scratchy. I think of it kind of like the Joker makeup. I like Jack Nicholson's more than Heath Ledger's because when it's polished, it's like even more terrifying. And that's how I feel about this art style, is that like it's so polished, which makes it so much more menacing. Like, I don't need to do, my imagination isn't taking me away or filling in the gaps. He is doing all the legwork for me, and it's like scarier, crazier, gnarlier than I could have imagined. There are a ton of characters in this book, and like there are great character designs in here. Also, like, big shout out if you're just like into the covers of this run and you want to collect the single issues and like get the covers. Alex Ross did every cover for this book. So if I'm being honest, this book was so hyped up. I like didn't even think it could live up to the hype it received going into this. But like the first half and then the second half, I read just voraciously of this book. When I was like, when I was plugged into it, I was plugged in. I just could not get enough of it. I think about the other books that were coming out in the time that this story was coming out, and when I think of Jason Aaron's Thor, that was the book that got me into Thor. This is very much a book that got me into Hulk. And it makes me want to read more Hulk. It makes me want to pick up the Peter David stuff. Maybe not all like 10 years of it. I didn't think I could be a Hulk fan, and this book made me a Hulk fan. So when it comes to standing amongst the titans of the last decade of Marvel writers, being Donny Cates, Jason Aaron, Al Ewing, and this Hulk run is up there. And it makes me, like, soon, not yet, but soon I'm going to read the Immortal Thor. Because this story is about hell, and then Thor is going to be about heaven. That's how I've understood it, and that run's not over yet. So I think I'm going to pick that up next because I want to see Ewing's take. I really loved his writing style after this. And as I was reading this, I just was reading so much Al Ewing after that. So glad to. This book brought Hulk to new heights, and I love being able to say that about a story. So for my rating, I give it a 10 out of 10. If you've read Immortal Hulk, let me know. And if you like body horror stuff, you're gnarly. Don't read it in public spaces. My name's Cameron. I just read comics. I love them. See you guys next time.